Thank you. Now it gives me great pleasure to introduce our second speaker. Our next speaker, Steve B., has been a member of Toastmasters for approximately 6 months now. And tonight he will be presenting his icebreaker speech titled Determination. Please help me welcome Steve B.
Who here has fallen off a bike? Please raise your hand. Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and welcome guests. When I was 5 years old, I, like most people, learned to ride a bike. I scraped my elbows and my knees, and I went through my fair share of bandages. But I learned to ride. And my father's the one who taught me how. He was constantly yelling for me to get back up on the bike and to keep pedaling. When I was 7, I was involved in a schoolyard accident. It was wintertime. And during recess, the kids would slide down a hill in the snow. And like all the other children, I'd slide down with them and get back up and do it all over again. Except this one time, I got to the bottom and a really big kid fell on top of me. I took his legs right out from under him because he didn't get out of the way quickly enough. I ended up in the hospital, and as it turned out, I had a broken clavicle bone. Also known as a collarbone, which is this one right here. I ended up wearing this strange-looking gizmo called a brace for about a month. I can't remember if I was teased at school or not, but I do remember the pain I went through when I first had to wear it. I also remember right after I started wearing the brace, I was lying on the couch at home with my parents standing over me, and again there was my father telling me to get up. It was simply too painful to get up, though. He kept telling me over and over again to sit up. After a bunch of excruciating tries, I finally sat up. He didn't explain to me what his intentions were at the time, but what he was doing was he was teaching me a valuable lesson on how to be determined. Just like when he told me to get back up on my bike and keep pedaling. Now fast forward a bit. I lived a relatively normal life growing up. I finished grade school, went to high school, and I attended college. But all the time with an unusual sense that something in the back of my mind, that something wasn't right in the world, something was just out of place. Now, while attending a local community college for broadcasting, I had the responsibility of working on several film projects. At the time, my responsibilities included audio and video editing, sound recordists, that sort of thing. One day, my third year film professor summoned me to his office, and out of the blue, he told me how he didn't like my work and how he'd never recommend my work to anyone. He then told me that he had no intention of letting me pass the course and that I may as well just quit. He failed me 1 week before I was supposed to graduate out of a 3-year course. Talk about having the wind taken out of your sails. For years after, I had no direction. I bounced from job to job, never truly being happy in anything I did. A few years later, a curious thing happened. A longtime friend of mine introduced me to the world of background acting. I wasn't sure if I wanted anything to do with being on camera. I was used to doing everything in a dark editing suite somewhere. But he kept telling me how much fun it was. He said, "Come on out, you're going to love it." Now I'll give you an idea of what background acting is for those who don't know. Background acting is where you see people in a TV show or on film, at the movies, walking around doing things in the background behind the principal actors. And what that does is it helps make TV and motion pictures a lot more natural looking to the viewing audience. I started driving back and forth from my home in Niagara Falls to various movie sets in Toronto, and I got to know all the streets. And let me tell you, I could have given those courier delivery guys, I could have given them a run for their money because I knew where everything was. Within a year, I had my actor's union card, which meant that I didn't have to drive back and forth for $7 an hour anymore. I could drive back and forth for over 3 times the pay. I was thrilled that I'd found a job doing something that I'd really liked, and I was getting paid well for it. But there was still a sense in the back of my mind that something was out of place in the world. And over that last year, it had grown into an uncontrollable nervousness. Within a month of getting my union card, I started taking voice classes so that I could learn how to do voice acting for film, radio, and television. I also started a new job within the film industry. I started working as a stand-in. Now, for those of you who do not know, a stand-in is a person who looks similar to the actor that they're standing in for. They don't have to look exactly like them, they just have to look similar. Hair color, eyes, height, skin tone. And in my case, it was Alec Baldwin. The lighting and the camera technicians, as well as the rest of the film crew, would take their camera measurements and light readings from us, the stand-ins. Meanwhile, the principal actors would be studying for their next scene. It was a great gig and one that was going to last. It was a great gig and one that was going to last at least a year, which meant pretty good money. And on top of that, I was going to work with Alec Baldwin. Before that was able to happen, though, I took a last-minute job doing stand-in for an HBO film called Cheaters. And that's with Jeff Daniels and actor Paul Sorvino. And it's a story about a group of students who cheat during an academic decathlon. And, once again, I was the stand-in. It was a very stressful set to work on, lots of overtime, lots of heated tempers, and lots of yelling on set, and I was already feeling extremely anxious. I thought it was just nerves, but I forced myself to do the job regardless of anything that happened because I didn't want to let anybody down, and I was determined to do the job to the best of my ability. A couple of weeks went by and the nerves got worse, and I repressed it, thinking it was just stage fright. Everybody goes through it. Then one day during the shoot, I was asked to stand in on a very large stage in front of an auditorium filled with over 300 background extras and people. So there I am, face to face with over 300 people looking back at me on a big stage. The film crews were whizzing about. These people were looking at me, and everybody's getting all their readings and their light measurements and so on, and that's when it happened. The anxiety took full control, and I was no longer in the driver's seat. After becoming nauseous and nearly passing out, I excused myself, and I went outside to gain my composure. But I couldn't go back inside. I just couldn't do it. From that day forward, I was unable to work. I called in sick for weeks. I couldn't understand what was going on. What I didn't realize at the time is that I was having extreme panic attacks. And over time it got worse. It eventually got so bad that I couldn't leave my apartment for nearly 9 months. I survived life simply by going to the convenience store around the corner from where I lived. Eventually I learned that what I was dealing with was something called socialized anxiety disorder, which is a form of panic disorder. 10 years ago, panic disorder wasn't as well known then as it is today. It's all over the TV today. It's all over, you see it in the commercials and everything. So I really had no idea what was controlling my life at the time. But every day I still tried to force myself to get out. And it was determination that got me through it all. And 10 years later, I heard those words my father taught me so long ago. Keep pedaling and get up. That's when I decided to start here at Toastmasters and face one of the worst fears of my life, which was public speaking. The same fear that we've all had to deal with, and one that I'm happy to say that we're helping each other overcome. 10 years ago, I lost everything I was working towards on a stage. Now I'm back, working in front of people, once again facing my fears, sometimes on a stage, sometimes in a room like this, with an audience. I'd like to leave you with a quote, now, written by the 30th President of the United States, Calvin Coolidge. It's one that I've gotten to know very well over the last number of years. Nothing in the world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful men with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. The slogan, "Press On," has solved and always will solve the problem of the human race. Mr. Toastmaster.
Well, thank you, Steve. You will recognize why I've been telling Steve for some time now that he has a great voice, and I've been looking forward to hearing his icebreaker. Well done, Steve.
For the second evaluation of this evening's speeches, evaluating Steve's speech, I'd like to call on your friend and mine, Eileen Schrader.
Mr. General Evaluation, fellow Toastmasters, and welcome guests, especially Steve. Steve, it is my privilege and my honour to be able to evaluate you this evening. Mainly because I remember you coming into our club and you were friendly enough in some ways, but in other ways you didn't want to get up, you didn't want to participate. And last night and tonight shows me how far you have come along. And I only hope that that we have been at least somewhere we've been able to help you to get to this stage. The speech, of course, was very good, excellent. You have a very good commanding voice. It's lovely, it's strong, and it's very well modulated. You can hear it. It was excellent. Now, I'm going by the icebreaker things in the book. It said, how well did you get to know the speaker? We got to know you very well. I'm sure these people here who have not met you, have not seen you before, know a good deal about you and what you have overcome and what you have done. And it was very well done that way. How did the audience get to know the speaker? Well, because you had lots of preparation. You knew the speech, of course. You were telling us your own life, and that way you came across so that we were there. We were with you all the time. It was very good. Did the speech reflect adequate preparation? Certainly. I thought you had prepared it beautifully, and even if you hadn't already done it once before that nobody else here knows, nobody would have known. And you didn't display any symptoms at all of nervousness, not at all. And now last night, sorry, but he did this speech last night. Last night you concentrated more on your notes. This time you did lift your head, you spoke, which eventually, of course, unlike me, you'll be doing all the time. But even I thought when I heard you tonight, I thought from last night to tonight, for goodness sake, you've come along in leaps and bounds. Wonderful, wonderful. Did the speaker talk clearly and audibly? Excellently, I thought, very good. And did you have a definite opening and a body and a conclusion, etc.? And you did. You started off very well by telling us the story about the bicycle and your father. And right away, we've all fallen off bicycles, so we were all interested. And you finished off the ending with a very, very good quote, which was excellent. So that was very good. And it said here, please comment on the use of the speaker's notes, which I thought you did very well because you had them here. And as I say, you looked up quite a few times. You looked up and you talked to people. I don't mind notes because myself, I watch people speaking. I've been to all kinds of speaking things, and most people do not march up and down the stage waving their hands, regardless of what anyone says. And so you stood here and you did it very well, I must say. What could you have done differently? Well, I don't really know what you could have done differently myself. I couldn't see anything that I thought that you could have improved on. I thought you were doing very well. You overcame most of the things that you were in the beginning afraid of, and now hopefully you will keep going on. And what did I like about the presentation? I liked the whole thing, and I can only say that I am so very glad that you got back on the bicycle and keep pedaling and press on.